get everybody grounded a little bit, as well as myself. Good morning. Crazy, like self-exploration these last few days. Well, yeah, just ramping up in intensity each and every time. More and more awareness coming in, more and more choices, more and more awareness of my whys. And I got in really deep last night talking with a lady friend. We started to talk about relationships and how dating's kind of broken and really what the root of relationships are. And being a little bit older, I've been through a marriage and a whole bunch of relationships. And I'm getting more and more clarity as I wander through this in the purpose of relationship. In this 3D reality, we are taught the fairy tale in a lot of ways of growing up, going to school, getting a good job, finding a partner and having children, getting a house, etc., and then we get up the escalator and we get to the top and we realize that it's built on hollowness, like being loved by another, searching for love outside of ourselves. And when shit starts to get real, that stuff falls apart. And then add in traumas and different hardships of the world, a relationship can rapidly fall apart. And it shows, the biggest thing that I've learned through all of this is a relationship is like a mirror. And we don't get many of those where we let a person in and be, in general, deeply vulnerable, but we'll talk about that in a sec. But a person that you can completely trust and feel you can talk about anything with because you're having sharing the same bed and maybe sharing sexuality with that person, having children with the person, combining all your assets, your home, your money, having children and supporting them. Now, a lot of us have traumas that are grown throughout our life, and they're points of shame and guilt and other things. And we don't want to be seen as lesser by our partner. So sometimes really key and important traumas are not talked about or shared, and they're hidden because the person is ashamed about them. They're scared that person will judge them, or that'll be the breakup of the relationship, and a big mess starts to occur. The hiding of that builds up levels of lies and insecurity and other things, and we start to pretend to be somebody that we're not. And eventually that shows through, and then the relationship kind of hollows out and the whole thing falls apart. Anybody that's been through a relationship is going to know it. And I'm going to guarantee, because I know I've had this, the reason for the relationship breaking up is completely different for the two people. There's often a huge amount of resentment about lies or perceived lies, or a story that's been made up based on both parties not sharing what their truth is, and it creates this big black hole that creates a cataclysm, and then everything falls apart. Now, that's traditional 3D relationships, and we're having a lot of them, and we're trying to protect ourselves in dating as we're moving forward to try and not have the same thing happen again. And it's a big mess, and nobody's being truthful about anything. Everybody's hiding their motivations, their fears, their traumas, etc. So what I'm suggesting, and I've been suggesting this for a while, and I'm starting to get really deeply into creating the container for this, is starting to become aware of the perspective of using relationship in a little bit of a lighter way to start. And this may sound uncomfortable or whatever, but I'm saying we go in without marriage being the outcome. We go in as choosing to self-explore ourselves, to go in and intentionally open ourselves to the possibility of self-exploration with another person. So creating what I call a 3-month relationship container. Instead of dating, you go in, you kind of go all in with a person that you're interested in, you're attracted to, etc. But you set some really clear early on, like, not so much negotiations, but an agreement. Like, okay, is sexuality important to you? Is this something that you love? Do you want marriage? Do you want a father for your kids? Do you want a mother for your kids? Do you want this or that? What do you like in life? Do you want somebody that sleeps in bed beside you? Do you like just to get together 2-3 times a week? You have a really deep and open, vulnerable conversation about what lights you up and what's fun and what's playful, and maybe being honest about some of your traumas and your triggers and how things broke up last time, and go in with vulnerability, accountability, and self-responsibility as the linchpins, the foundation. And you basically start off with in the end, this may sound kind of weird, but a formal agreement that nobody walks away for the 3 months. You're all in, and it has a community to support it behind it when things get hard and when some of your stuff starts showing up. But you go into the relationship all in with all your stuff exposed, and the other person is exposing their stuff too. But you have to hold the space. You can't walk away. You can't ghost. You can't whatever. There's a 24-hour rule in there where when shit gets real, you can say, I'm calling the 24-hour rule. I need to go adjust, and actually it's a very, very healthy thing, but you have to come back. You have to come back in the container. You don't walk away, because honestly, the walking away has nothing to do with the other person. It has almost everything to do with you and whether you're willing to deal with what's showing up, or maybe this reflected perspective that you're hiding something, or something is shameful or guilty inside of you, and the other person touched on it. And our habit is just to smash it and run away and not be held space for. But if we go in without these requirements of attachment, you're going in, and the relationship container before you negotiate it is agreed that either party can step away after 3 months, because you're going to really know the other person. But the caveat is you have to explain why. I'm not ready for this, or I'm not whatever, but at least you're going to get closure out of that agreement. Now, to start to become really clear on this, we are getting a mirror all the time in a relationship. And if we're attached to an outcome, like I need to get married, I need to find a father for my kids, I need to find a mother for my kids, I need something, and it's undisclosed, there's an expectation and an obligation, and it gets really messy really fast, because everybody's trying to ask for something without asking for it. Where if we go into this container from the beginning, you're going to talk about a lot of stuff. I like sex. I don't like sex. I like kissing. I don't like kissing. I like to go to parties. I like to smoke marijuana. I like to whatever. You get it all out on the table very early on. And before you commit to spending 3 months with this person, you have a pretty good idea of who they are underneath. Now, you're going to find out character and how much this person has insecurity and other things once you kind of progress. But at the beginning, you're going to say, okay, well, in my world, sexuality is an important part of relationship. Is that something that you want as well? If it's like, oh, I can't do that until we're married, or whatever, and we get that on the table by answering a bunch of relationship questions early on, then there's no expectation. There's no question mark. There's no, okay, this person does or doesn't want it, and I'm trying to read between the lines. It throws out all the crap of trying to figure out stuff third hand and arm's length and all these things. We get it out on the table, and then we also create a container where we can actively ask questions. Okay, we've been together in this for 2 weeks, and we've been out for supper and done all these things. Is sexuality something that you want? You're waiting for my invitation? Is this something not? And I concentrate on sexuality because that's probably the deepest, darkest part. Like, being vulnerable and having vulnerable conversations all goes around intimacy, seeing depth. And if that depth starts to grow and you start to feel safe, your body's going to open. And the root of the sexuality, the creation energy, the passion, the excitement, the growth, and really the healing is around that connection. And in my world, you might be able to have a deep, intimate connection with a person without being sexual, but if that's going to be your life partner or whatever, I think that's a core of all of it. And once you get to that place, the opening of the body, the opening of traumas, the opening of fears, the vulnerability comes much faster. And literally there's healing that comes from pleasure and other things that you can't get any other way. So it's a really important part of a container. Would you want to go into let's have a celibate container? How do you get intimate and see a person without touch, without cuddling? And not everybody has those as their love languages, but they create depth and intimacy. So we're now creating a container where you've agreed up front of how all these things work. You don't have to be shamed. You don't have to be wondering if, they're going to see me as too sexual or too not sexual or whatever. And this magic thing starts to happen. You start to grow in with this person. Now, the other thing that's really important about a container like this is you start out of independence. So keep your house, your place. You're not going to combine assets right away. You got your selective corners to go back to when things get hard. You're going to run into shit and it's going to scare you and it's going to be uncomfortable. But we've also got this container where that other person has agreed to come back in when the shit gets real, when you're scared. I'm the person. Call me, talk to me. Let's go through this. I'm owning my shit. You're owning your shit. We're going to find out. Sometimes we're going to clash and sometimes we're going to be triggered. And part of the prerequisites of going in is we get some really basic triggers training. We get to deal with this stuff. We have a community of people that are aware of these things. And when you hit bottom or you don't know what to do and you can't talk to that partner in that moment, you go back to somebody in the community that's doing the exact same thing. And now you can talk to them. They can see your perspective, where we don't have any of this in traditional dating. We just go in blind. We get worried, we get sad. Yeah, we use our girlfriends, boyfriend, guy friends, whatever, to help us work through all these things, but they don't have any container of doing the work, showing up when the mirror scares the fuck out of you and you're like, holy shit, I'm seeing a part of myself I don't like, or whatever. We need to have just really basic agreements that say, I'm always going to be honest. I'm always going to be vulnerable. I agree to be accountable. I'm not going to project on you. I'm not going to hate you. I'm going to want to, because that's my old pattern, but you're going to hold space for me and say, hey, you're not being safe here, and you take a couple breaths and sit back and go sit over there for a minute, and I will listen to anything, because we've got this container. But I learn self-respect. I learn self-love by saying, hold on, you're not being accountable to yourself. Take a breath. Let's deal with this. I want to deal with this energy. I'm committed. We got 3 more months in this. Let's get through this. And as we start to realize that using this container and using relationship as the actual tool it is for awakening us, creating a container for us so that we can feel safe, and then using it to its full depth, that doesn't exist. I can guarantee, I've had a marriage. I know most people don't have a container this deep, because it's built on hiding some of our shit, hiding our traumas, hiding our darkness, hiding what's not working for us, etc. If we went into a container that was fully committed right from the beginning, with gentle rules that allow us to deal with what shows up, and then we go through it, can you imagine how much better you're going to know that person that's been vulnerable to you, heard you talk your deepest thoughts? Here's another one even that happens in sexuality with people. They go on a first date and they're trying to assess if this person is sexually compatible with them. Your most clumsy first sexuality experience is your first date. Your second date is a kind of a learning. Before 3 times, you're not even really opening up. So we're giving this container where you can start to explore all those things, work out all your kinks, work out your discomforts, your shames, guilts, or past experiences. Have an opportunity to say, oh, my girlfriend shamed me about the size of my equipment, or my boyfriend used to pull my hair and I didn't like that and it made me feel really unsafe. You're now opening in that container and saying, please don't do that. And can you love me? Can you whatever? And then all of a sudden, this avalanche of vulnerability, of intimacy starts to come by having this safe container to be able to explore it. And knowing that that person's not going to use it against you tomorrow because they're committed. For 3 months, they locked in. They put it on paper. They're committed. Can you imagine what you could explore in that space? And can you imagine how much safer you could be if it's like, okay, I'm going to get it all on the table and they're never going to think badly of me because I'm not ashamed or whatever. And over 3 months, once we've got it all out on the table, you're going to get past all that stuff. Now all of a sudden you're going to be really open and free about being yourself and wanting more for you, and you're going to get off on setting your own boundaries and then maybe changing your boundaries as you move forward and going up to your fear with this person that you know you can talk to, and you're not belittling yourself or changing things. Linda. Awesome. Well, you can watch more later. But we go in and we start to find this place where we can explore, and we have the option to walk away afterwards if it didn't feel good. And it was just a growth step. But a lot of times we get doing a version of this step and then getting married with a person and then feeling all locked together with them and not having any freedom, because you're going to smash where you live and you're going to smash your money and you're going to hurt your kids and you're going to hurt your partner, where this is really accountable. In Celtic cultures, they have something called Beltane, where once a year you reassert your marriage vows. Can you imagine how that would change marriage? How people would have to kind of keep going in and giving and receiving and all this kind of stuff if they're trying to continue to promote something that's working for them. So this container will do our spiritual work for us, and it will allow us to get vulnerable and deep. And it needs 3 months. But once you've done probably 2 or 3 of these, like, consider it as a form of alternate dating. But once you've done 2 or 3 of these, you're going to really know what you want. You're going to be really, really direct and open about your perspectives, what your desires are, what your body needs are, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And you're going to learn that place. And then along the way, some person that's going to come together and they're going to be like, holy frick, this is as close to a match as I've ever met, because now you've defined yourself. You went into this container of exploring each other and some magic happens. All of a sudden you're free and the other person's free, and you're connecting not from attachment or filling your holes. You're connecting because it feels good and this is fun. And now you can feel truth and you don't have to hide anything. You don't have to worry. You can lay it out on the table, and in that 3 month period, oh, I was raped as a child, or I have mommy or daddy issues or whatever. You can bring it all out on the table and then explore it. And then they can say, okay, in the middle of a discussion, and you're like, why are you kowtowing to me, or why are you agreeing to me? I see your mother issues coming up or whatever. Can we look at that? Why are you doing that? Why are you trying to please me? All this kind of stuff gets open and possible on the table. And then honestly, it makes your relationship from that period onwards that much better. Oh, why is this going on? Why do I feel this energy? Can you explain it? What's going on inside of you? Please share it, because it's hurting me, or it's breaking down the relationship and I'm resenting you because you won't talk about it. The container contains all that stuff. And honestly, it's going to be a level set point for you from now on to want to have these discussions, to want to go to this depth in every relationship you have. And it's all even going to spread into friendships, because this is the way it needs to be done. Being vulnerable, being open, being okay with who you are, even though you might be crying and sad and uncomfortable inside or whatever, but at least you got somebody to talk to about it. If it can't be your closest partner, or you got to go to some secret circle to share it because your partner, you're scared that you're going to scare them off by it, that partner feels it. That partner wants to support you. That partner wants, but we don't have frame to be able to hold those kind of energies. So if we can create these containers, and honestly, I think this is even replacing marriage, because marriage doesn't have any of this. It's like to love, honor, trust, and whatever, in sickness and health and all this kind of stuff. People agree to be bound by it, but when shit gets real, the energetic container, the holding space, isn't there, and it explodes. It scares people. It gets them triggered. Wouldn't you want a partner that has all those triggers gone? What if you die? What if I get sick? What if whatever? These are all conversations that need to be happening early on in the relationship, and you got to be clear on it. It's like, oh shit, that would scare the hell out of me if you had some chronic illness and I had to stay home from work and we would die, and I'm scared of that or whatever. Well, it's a conversation that should be had if it's a fear for either. So what I'm just going to close is, we need a new way of relating with people, because what we have now is broken. People are not having their needs met. There's lots of people walking around in lack. Even women are walking around in lack of sexuality. We talk about it as a constant problem with men, and men being too direct about sexuality and other things. Well, women need to be more direct about their sexuality. They need to be empowered in their sexuality and not feel shamed and guilted by society for being sexual women. Men do it, but then they get shamed and guilted for being too direct or making a woman feel uncomfortable. Well, if those discussions are held early on and say, hey, sexuality is important to me, and I'm going to put my hand up right now, that's something that drives me. It fills my life and makes me feel alive, and I want to share that with someone. And I'm not going to be ashamed about it anymore. And it's a root of the human experience. It's where our pleasure comes from. It's where all these beautiful hormones of oxytocin and serotonin, all these things come out of our brain by being connected intimately, and then at some point, probably sexually and physically with another person. That's a part of relationship. And if you don't want that, or that scares you, or it makes you feel uncomfortable, be direct with the person. And that person can say, well, that's not the same thing that I want. I honor you and I respect you, and let's move on. And then nobody's time gets wasted. But it requires a foundation of having some hard conversations and being really honest with yourself the first time in. And it's going to feel uncomfortable the first time, but afterwards, it's going to be so freeing. And then from then on, that's going to be the set point for how you engage with others. Not from mystery, trying to read between the lines, how they treat their grandma and how they treated us on 15 dates and all this kind of stuff. It's going to be, hey, what's your beliefs about connection? What's your belief about children? What's your belief about marriage? How come you had a divorce? What was underneath? What's your shames and guilts? What's the things that scare you the most? Get those out on the table early on when you have nothing to lose, because you haven't invested a whole bunch of time or other things, and something magic starts to happen. And creating this container, creating the process so that people can use it, is something I'm dedicating myself to, because I've been building it consciously in my relationships, and it's working, and it's helped me grow massively. And I'm not seeing dating and other ways of connecting with people for relationship are working. So tune in more. And if you want to talk about it, or you got questions, just put them in the comments below. I love to talk about this stuff. I love to learn from other people's perspective. I'm a man. I love feminine perspective on this, and it's going to create something that feels good and works for everyone. So thoughts, put them down below. If it triggers you, put it down below. We'll get her all out in the open. I love you all. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you soon.